Right in front of the slides. And so essentially, what we do at Brainbot, should I just do that again? What we do at Brainbot is use personal brain sensors to help you learn and understand about your brain. And it's really kind of very appropriate that Michael asked us to come down here because the way we actually got started is measuring meditation. So as he hinted earlier, I used to work in a lab which studies the kind of neuroimaging of meditation. So similar to the kind of stuff that Kathy does. So this slide, which this is Sarah Lazar, who's a PI at the Martino Center, which is a Harvard, MIT, MGH joint imaging facility in Charlestown. And essentially what we study with Sarah is kind of the basis, the neurobiological basis of meditation, how these kind of mechanistically, how this practice mechanistically changes things in the brain, both structurally and also functionally. So a lot of interesting stuff. So the next slide kind of talks about this particular incarnation of mindfulness, which is called MBSR, and Kathy touched on this. I'm glad that she went first. So essentially MBSR is kind of John Kabat-Zinn's way of taking mindfulness practices and techniques and kind of secularizing them and turning them into this 8-week program that's very simple for people to follow. And there have been a host of almost 60 publications now that have documented kind of a wide range of health benefits from this 8-week course. So I mean, this ranges from things like anxiety, high blood pressure, fatigue, chronic headaches, binge eating, so that's impulse control, really a whole range of different things. So there are positive benefits here, right? If you can go to the next slide. Beyond those positive benefits, there are also these structural changes that happen in the brain. So this is a study that came out of Sarah's lab a couple years ago, and essentially what this slide is showing is kind of highlighting a couple areas in the brain that are changed in this 8-week course. So again, MBSR is this 8-week mindfulness course. And you can see that over the course of time, over the course of these 8 weeks, there are structural changes in the brain. So this is looking at, I believe, gray matter density. So you can see prefrontal cortex, which is associated with executive memory, cognitive control and things like this, and also insula, which is sort of emotional processing, interoceptive awareness. Interesting parts of the brain, and we see that they're actually changing over as little as 8 weeks. So these are not monks, these are just regular people doing this 8-week course. So, next slide. And this is actually a really landmark study from 2004. And I just wanted to share it because seeing this study really changed my kind of perception of how you could actually go about studying meditation. So this is a study from Antoine Lutz and others that looked at Tibetan monks. So they were kind of looking at this cohort of monks who had practiced meditation for many, many hours, right? And what you're looking at here, so these two are basically controls, and here you have these practitioners. And they kind of take a baseline reading during their resting state, and then a second reading when they start their meditation. And you can see that the controls kind of stay basically where they were, whereas these Tibetan monks have like incredible amounts of gamma activity, which is the specific frequency that they were looking at here. I think it's described in the paper as pathological levels of gamma activity, so it's just off the charts, you can see here, so this is kind of showing some frontal electrodes, so kind of here and then in the center of the scalp. And this is the resting state. They asked the monks to start meditating here. And you can really see this is just dramatic. I mean, it really blows me away. There's a huge change in kind of the gamma activity in this region, actually in multiple regions. And this is all measurable with EEG, which is electroencephalography. So basically it's measuring the kind of gross potential of many thousands of neurons firing simultaneously. And it's actually a pretty cheap technology, which is what makes this really exciting, right? Especially for QS folks. So so that kind of brings us to the next point, which is, how does QS Quantified Self kind of interface with meditation? And I guess the next slide. And this is kind of the way that this whole interaction gets started. So over the course of the last 3 or 4 years, there have been a host of consumer EEG companies. So EEG has been kind of this technology that's been relegated to academic settings, clinical research labs, things like this. And traditionally EEG, I don't know if you guys have seen like leads, but usually it's kind of a whole bunch of wires like connected to somebody's head, and there's goo, and there's this, it's $15,000 to $20,000, and it's huge. It's very expensive, and it's also very uncomfortable because it's optimized for research, right? But in the last couple of years, there have been a whole host of companies that have released consumer-grade EEG. So this changes everything, right? These are very cheap devices on the order of $100, and now anybody can kind of grab them and start collecting data. So, so this is the Emotive. It's a multi-channel active electrical system. This is OCZ NIA. This is the ZEO, which I think there was the meetup here a couple months ago. We kind of looked at sleep, and so you can track sleep with the EEG as well. And this is NeuroSky's devices. So they're all very similar, and they all measure EEG and achieve it. So yeah, next slide. Yeah, so this is the beginning of how Brainbot, the startup that I'm working on now, kind of got started. So basically, I've been interested in meditation for a long time, and I wanted to measure my own meditation, and I was also kind of curious about how meditation looked in monks. So I had the chance to travel to India in 2009, and I bought a couple of these devices. I took them with me and kind of hiked through the Himalayan mountains. And I don't know how many of you have been to that part of the world, but there are monks that kind of live at the top of these mountains and meditate. It's something that's going on for thousands of years, and really very interesting kind of people. And if you go to the next slide, so I actually convinced them to put on the headset that I was carrying with me and meditate. So basically, we got a baseline reading, a meditation reading. So I can tell you a little bit about some of these people. Really, really amazing kind of folks. You can imagine. So this guy kind of meditated in a cave in Kashmir for 6 or 7 years. He was telling me about like how big the cave was, and he was kind of like pacing it out. So very interesting guy and super cool meditation. And this is a Tibetan monk who lives in Ladakh. Ladakh is basically this totally isolated part of India, northern India, kind of close to Tibet. It's in the desert part of the Himalayan mountains, and you can only get there like at a certain part of the year during the summer when the glaciers kind of melt. So I waited till the summer, kind of went on this rickety bus over these glaciers, you get to this huge desert, and there are these monasteries there. So this is a monk who lives in one of those monasteries, and he's a Tibetan monk. This is the Kaki tradition, for those of you who are familiar with the various types of meditation. So, and then I just included one more slide here. So this is an Indian, she's actually originally from New Jersey, but she lives in India now, and she's been a monk for almost 30 years. So all kinds of different people. And that was kind of the basis of this data set that I collected, which is about 30 people. And some and all over India, from kind of the south to the north, a lot in the Himalayan mountains where a lot of these people kind of concentrate. Next slide. And this is the basic format of the data set. So there's 5 minutes of rest and 15 minutes of meditation. And so there are different kinds of meditation, right? Some, for example, Zen and yoga are kind of, maybe you can imagine, are kind of on two different spectrums, two different ends of a single spectrum. There are types of meditation that are kind of open awareness, others that are sort of concentrated. So as Kathy was saying, attention is really the basis of a lot of this. And so you can kind of change your attentional focus in a lot of different ways. And so there are many, many styles of meditation, and that's one of the both problems and strengths of this data set. There are different types of meditation here. So yeah, kind of taking that into account, and this is just really quick. These are the only slides of data that I will show today. So hopefully we'll have some time. If you guys are interested, you can put the headset on and kind of take a reading and compare you to some monks and things like that. But basically what we do at Brainbot is combine kind of signal processing and also machine learning and pattern detection techniques to try to analyze what your brain is doing and how you're meditating. So we did this with this data set of monks, 30 monks, and you can see here that these are unoptimized, and these are balanced success rates. So essentially every second we're taking a reading of brain. We turn that into an 8-vector. So we basically take different frequency bands, put them into this vector, and we use the machine learning techniques to classify them. So every second we're saying, are you meditating or are you not? Is your mind wandering, right? And so we have classification accuracies in some cases up to like 95%, right? So every second we're like at 95% in some of these really, really long-term monks. And in others, kind of the worst case scenario is sort of like 0.6, so 60%. And everything in between, generally we're at like 0.75 or 0.8 on average in this monk data set. So this is an approach that gets around the different styles of meditation because we train a personal classifier based on every person's brain. So it's a cool technique. We're actually just getting started, but yeah, this is the data that we've been working with. So if you go to the next slide, this is just an optimization. It was supposed to sort of show up without looking like an identical slide, but basically it just shows that we can use techniques to kind of improve our accuracy. So that's a lot of what we do at Brainbot. This is a pure web-based system. So if you go to the next slide, essentially we're taking these headsets like this. So this is a single sensor EEG device. It's all wireless, uses Bluetooth. You can hook it up to your iOS device, to your iPod, iPhone, laptop, desktops, whatever. And we take this EEG reading, send it to our servers, do this computation, send you something back. And so the end goal of this is to create a meditation device that kind of alerts you when your mind starts to wander. So a lot of times with meditation, right, for those of you who have a practice, one of the things that you run into a lot is that your mind starts to wander. And before, by the time you realize that it's been 20 seconds, 30 seconds, minutes.
20 minutes.
Exactly, right. And so the idea is here, if we can detect when you're in rest and when you're in meditation on a second-to-second basis, we can alert you when your mind starts to wander much more quickly, right? So that's kind of the basis and the reason that we're using this approach. And so if anyone's curious, we have a headset here. We're still in beta, so the last slide is just a QS code, and this kind of got reformatted in the move from Keynote, but we're in this incubator, this healthcare incubator in San Francisco called Rock Health. So our launch date is November 10th. So this is all kind of before we actually launch, but we're happy to show you guys what we're up to and read your brainwaves and kind of give you a sense for what we're doing there. If anybody's interested, you can go to www.brainbot.me, which is the website, and enter the invite code QSMed and hear about us when we launch. So does anybody have any questions?
Can you do a live demo?
We're not quite there yet. So our launch is November 10th, and we're trying to kind of optimize for that. There's a lot of things that we have to work on between now and then, but coming soon. So if you're interested, go ahead and sign up, and we can send something to you. Yes?
When you went through the Himalayas and stuff, did you just walk around and run into these people? How do you start conversations with them?
Right. I've been interested in meditation for a long time, so it kind of came from a place of sincerity and honesty. I wanted to interact with these people and see what their experience was of being a monk, living on the top of these mountains. You saw a picture of these guys, kind of the rocks and the mountain. They live up there really with basically nothing, very few supplies, and they meditate 12, 16 hours a day. These are really, really interesting people. And so really just kind of asking them what their life is like and what kind of techniques they use.
Are they generally approachable?
They're incredibly friendly, yeah. It's ridiculous. So as long as you don't catch them during the meditation, they are very happy to kind of let you in, then make you tea. So really, really fun people.
And do you speak to them in Hindi? Or?
Yeah, so a lot of these monks are Tibetans, but they also speak Hindi.
Okay.
And a few speak some English, but I speak a little bit of English, so enough to get by. Facial expressions, gestures. Yes?
What other benefits do you kind of foresee for this? Because I have to tell you, as someone I don't meditate a lot, but it's a practice that I'm starting to try to develop, and I can't imagine anything more annoying than the information that you're meditating wrong. It just seems. We know that there's a relationship between meditation practice and some positive developments, self-improvements. But that doesn't necessarily mean that somebody who's meditating at a 70% efficacy is going to be worse off than somebody at 95% efficacy.
Very true.
So I'm curious, but this is interesting, trying to kind of correlate all of these, electromagnetic sort of signals that maybe some of these are more correlative with some of these positive benefits than not. So I can't say that particular aspect of this will help you figure out when your mind is wandering or not. I don't know if that's necessarily that big of a positive, but it seems like this kind of data that you're gathering, especially if it's integrated with other stuff, could be really cool. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are about other things that you might be doing with it.
Well, I guess first off, I'm curious what those other things are. That would be cool. But in terms of the feedback, yeah, it's true. Like, feedback is a tricky thing, right? So you want to give enough feedback such that you're improving someone's experience, but not so much that you're knocking them out of the state of meditation. So this is like really tricky, right? Because say you have a screen beeping at you, or something somehow indicating that you're out of the state, that's potentially going to draw you further away from where you're trying to go rather than helping you get there. So there are two kinds of feedback. One would be like positive feedback, like the more you meditate, the more, say a tone is played, right? So that would be less distracting, right? Because then you're actually kind of guided into the state. The negative feedback is when you're out of it, when your mind is wandering, a bell is played or something like that.
Right.
So there are two different.
My understanding of some mindfulness practice is that when you get distracted, you actually investigate that distraction, and so it's not, you're moving away from just focusing on the breath or your toes or whatever to more sort of cognitive mindfulness exploration. I'm wondering how that would end up showing up on the scan as something that is distraction, because it still could end up being fruitful from a meditation practice standpoint. You know what I mean?
Sure. So actually allowing people to tag their own states is something that we're actually incorporating into the final version. So it's not only kind of just a generic classification, but you'll actually say you detect your mind wandering. You tap the screen, and over time the system may learn to actually recognize that. So that's something we're working on. But yeah, it's a tricky balance, and so we're trying to hit it, but it is tricky. Yes.
So I'm wondering how your system compares to there's a type of meditation where every minute a bell rings. That works pretty well for me because about every minute I'm already stopping to pay attention. So why would I want to use technology when all I need is a bell that rings every minute?
Sure. So that's actually a really good point, right? Meditation has been going on for thousands and thousands of years, and now here we are, with modern technology trying to optimize it, right? Yeah. So maybe we're being foolish. It's a good thought, and to a certain extent it's true. But I think there is a value to a lot of these tools. So say as you start to meditate more and more, maybe that every minute becomes every 2 minutes or every 5 minutes, and there will come a point where kind of arbitrarily playing the tone is less effective than actually reading what's going on in your brain. Mm-hmm. So essentially what this tool kind of acts like is a meditation instructor that can kind of read your mind. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you're familiar with Zen. They kind of, a lot of times they'll carry around a stick, and kind of the instructor will kind of see you slouching or losing your attention, and hit you with the stick, right? So this is kind of the virtual equivalent of that.
So using an Arduino, we should tie a stick to that.
Yes.
I'm not totally familiar with Respirate, but that's a technology I think that is used to help you get into a more relaxed state, and its overall output is that your blood pressure is lowered over a period of time. So you can actually go to a physician and they can prescribe Respirate, which is essentially a CD that helps you get into a relaxed state. And over a period of time, those people that use Respirate repeatedly have a lower blood pressure, and they may or may not have to take antihypertensive pills. Do you see that as a potential in the future of your company, moving into the health and wellness claims?
Sure. So right now we're very focused on meditation, but as it turns out, meditation actually has a lot of health benefits. One is stress reduction. So chronic stress is kind of a huge toll on society. I think it's in the billions of dollars, right, according to some estimates. So I mean, you can kind of address some of the things of these health problems through meditation, but I think our main focus right now is really just trying to nail this first thing, which is helping people to meditate.
Let me add a follow-on. The nice thing about blood pressure reduction is it's a quantifiable measure, right, whereas stress reduction may be more of a soft measure. And if you're looking for making claims about something, you might want to make claims around some proxy or biomarker like blood pressure reduction.
Right. I mean, theoretically, we could just put a cuff on somebody and record simultaneously, look for correlations.
Right.
So that's something that we are thinking a lot about, using other sensors, heart rate, metabolic skin response. There are a ton of new companies and new devices out there for measuring all kinds of biosignals, right? And I think correlating all of these together is really a big challenge for quantified self in general moving forward. So something very interesting, hopefully on the horizon. Yes?
Okay, so I had epilepsy as a child, and I used to have all those EEGs and everything like that.
Right.
They're all sticky. But the seizure stopped when I was around 11 years old. That was like 20 years ago. These days, last week I was looking at a bunch of devices like what you have there, like $100, $200, and they have these development SDKs, so people can write all these applications and they don't even need like an Apple developer connection. They could just write them for the iPhone and stuff like that.
Right.
I was wondering, do you guys have any, do you guys, what about the development and stuff like that? Are you guys just reporting right now, or are you doing some kind of experimentation? Because they even have like games now, like where you can battle with people.
Yeah, I mean, this is a huge thing, right? So actually, this company, NeuroSky, so we're using these devices now.
I see.
This is eminently hackable. They actually want you to hack on this.
They do.
So,
what are you guys writing then, and what's the code in for your app?
Yeah, so it's all Python. Really
Right,
front end,
nice.
back end. Yeah.
Very nice.
So at working in lab, I use kind of the same tool set. So open source Python. There are a lot of scientific libraries out there now for doing all kinds of stuff.
There's some community. I used to be on their mailing list, which is like not a device like that, but it's kind of like
OpenEEG.
Yeah, it's like this whole damn big ass box, and you're supposed to buy all the parts and stuff like that.
Right.
Have you messed around with that?
Yeah, actually we have a little bit.
And?
So it turns out that it's cheaper to actually buy these now. It's
Sure, right.
It's just the advantage of mass manufacturing. So there's room, I think, for all of
But
these kinds
do
of
those like
devices.
those open EEGs? Do they leave any kind of more flexibility as far as the different things you can?
It is more flexible. Yes, because you're building it from scratch. So you kind of decide how you want to put the board together, how many electrodes you want, what type you want, that sort of thing.
But can you detect perhaps things with open EEG that you can't with that device?
I really think that kind of building an EEG sensor is not that difficult. That's why all these companies are kind of doing it.
Right, yeah.
It's really, I think the magic comes in knowing how to interpret the signal.
I was just trying to figure out if there were any strengths in kind of doing it your own rather than buying a pre-made device.
I mean, definitely flexibility, I think, would be one. If you enjoy hacking on stuff, then it's just fun, right? So it's cool to build stuff. It's a trade-off, right? So you can buy this and then spend your time on the software, or you can hack the hardware yourself. Yes.
I love this, your whole idea, and I've been very supportive of it. But I have a question. You didn't talk about localization and how someone, first of all, where should these signals be measured from, and then how do you, aside from using a ball competitor tattoo, actually guarantee that session to session the localization is the same?
Right. This is actually a problem that we run into. It's not clear yet exactly how much variability there is, but this is something that we have to think about, right? So you can imagine putting this thing on. So definitely, from one person to the next, your head is going to be different, so this electrode is going to shift location. So we kind of get around that by building a personal classifier for people. So it's a personal brain state detection just based on your own data. So assuming you kind of put this on the same way every time, it's fine, right? But building ways in the future of maybe we use a webcam and we take a picture and then we can kind of automatically figure out where things are and build that into the model as well.
Or Sharpie.
Or Sharpie, right? Permanent tattoo. I mean, there are a lot of different ways to do this, right? But I think it's a huge issue. So moving forward, I think it's something that we want to think about. Yes.
I was just curious. I'm not that familiar with EEG, but I know enough about it. And I'm curious how specific, how detailed is the information that is coming out of the signal. I know that you're building a personalized model, but can the individual, if they're familiar with EEG, get that detailed information, and maybe they're interested in certain types of signal, and they want to try to hone that or something.
Yeah. No, I mean that
can be done.
Yeah, I mean that can totally be done, right? Right now, what we're doing is just the first step, right? But I mean, as I said, this device is totally hackable, so you can everyone yourself and go at it. So kind of moving forward, I think one of the things that we want to build into Brainbot is giving people just really easy, open open tools to kind of look at their own data and optimize for what they're actually interested in. So maybe you want to do alpha training, maybe you want to train on gamma, right? And so, and that's going to change from person to person. So building that into the system, I think, is something that is really important. We're gonna try to deal with that. Although, you know, we're in this incubator now, so it's one step at a time. But I take your point. It's something we think about a lot.
And are you a long-term meditator, or have you been meditating for a while?
I would say I'm a beginner. I've been doing it a long time though, so I don't know what that says. Yeah.
But do you see any interesting patterns with your own rhythm?
Yeah, so I have this month data set, right? And I'm constantly comparing my own to that. It's just terrible. Like it's discouraging.
It's all over the place.
Right.
And are you seeing something similar to the Davidson study or the Lutz and Lutz study, where you saw these longer periods in the gamma band?
Right. So initially, when I went out there, I mean, we were very, very focused on looking at gamma, and there do seem to be some trends in the gamma range, but I think the approach we ended up taking kind of encompasses not only people who focus on alpha and gamma, but what we do is actually take every single frequency band and use the entire kind of spectrum to build the model. So it kind of encompasses all of these different types of feedback. And yeah, so that's...
Yeah, you saw some of that, but it was the whole range. I guess you were more interested in.
Right, I mean, for the purposes of this tool, I think so. But gamma is an interesting frequency. It's a very interesting frequency. So, I mean, it's been linked to things like conscious perception.
And also flow.
Right.
Is what I hear. And I think that it was still intermittent, but the kinds of periods that they saw with the long-term practitioners was more than they had seen with almost any other group of people. Even they saw with some artists or trained musicians, but with meditators it was even it was like for a minute on end, which had never been recorded in science. So it was interesting.
No, I mean, it's fascinating stuff. And kind of the funny thing about it is people just didn't see gamma for a long time because they just weren't sampling high enough.
It's hard to measure.
Yeah, I mean, that's
I
true
mean,
as
there are a
well.
lot of artifacts.
Right. But I mean, just, from kind of looking at the last, each was around for almost 100 years. They just didn't see some of these frequency bands just based on the sampling rate. It's kind of silly little things like that end up making a difference when you don't know what you're looking for beforehand. So that's the cool thing about researching this.
Well, let's cut off questions here, but you'll be around afterwards?
Yeah, if anybody wants to, so we're early in this process, but check out the system and see how you stack up with monks.
Can people demo the EEG here? Like, do you have enough stuff here to try that out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe I don't understand the question.
Like, I know you can't use like the web interface right now.
No, we can.
Oh.
Right. I mean, it's not totally functional, but I mean, I can help guide.
Okay. So maybe we can demo it like after the next talk, or after
Yeah, I
we
mean,
wrap up.
I think on an individual kind of one-on-one.
Yeah,
thing,
okay.
It's totally doable.
Cool. Great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.